How many of you have done sales in the past? Just by a show of hands. Any type of sales. How many of you dread sales? Hate sales? Absolutely hate salespeople? How many of you believe that at no time in your life you will end up selling? Show of hands. Good, that's a good sign. Usually some people raise their hand and go, I never need to sell. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. I would argue that every single one of us, whether you're a parent, son or daughter, at whatever profession you are, you need to sell at some point. Because selling isn't just about exchanging a product for funds. You could call it influence. Anytime you want to convince somebody else to change their mind even, and come to your way of thinking, you're really selling maybe an idea. If you're with your significant other and you decide, you know, I want to go see a movie tonight, and your significant other just doesn't. She or he wants to stay at home and watch TV. You going over there and talking to them and getting the idea across is selling. We all have this, some of us, maybe not everybody, has this misconception that salespeople are after our money. You know, they're going to rob us, so I need to protect myself. And I actually think that there's some truth to that, because traditionally sales was done differently. I used to think a lot about that, and because of the preconceptions that I had, I kept on failing at sales. I've done a lot. I have a marketing background, and as a result of that, sales always came into that as well. Until about a year and a half ago or so, I met a gentleman by the name of Greg Wilson. He was, and is today, a sales trainer, a trainer for the Sandler Selling system. And that's what I'd like to show you today. I'd like to get into that a little bit with you. I met this gentleman, he gave a presentation, kind of what I'm going to give you today. And it made sense to me. Within that 15-minute presentation that he gave, that system made sense to me. So I decided to pursue it. There's a thing within Sandler Selling System that's called the President's Club, where you meet on a regular basis and you work with other people who are learning to enhance your learning and experience. I became a member of that, and as a result, I had a lot of success in sales specifically. Traditionally, when you're selling something, the very first step, or if you went to a sales seminar, a traditional sales seminar today, the very first step is to qualify your prospect. This is where you then do a needs analysis. You figure out whether or not this person is the right prospect for you, if this is the person that has a need for whatever it is you're selling, and then you move on to the next step, which is the presentation. You've qualified your prospect, and the next step is to put a presentation in front of them. Now the presentation is done in a PowerPoint sometimes it's a product demonstration, sometimes it's in the form of a walk. You take them and show them your facilities where everything is produced. There's various methods of doing this. The third step in that traditional system is the close, right? There's so many different closes. There are books written about how to do closing, and they have various names. And I'm not going to get into that because that's not what I'm trying to teach you. And then what's the last step? The chase, right? The chase. The salesperson keeps calling, and the prospect keeps running, right? You're just constantly chasing them. And this is actually a sort of a law of nature, if you think about it. I remember back in high school, all the guys who were super nice and polite and everything could never get the girls. But the guys who were just ignoring the girls and not paying any attention to them had these girls chasing them, right? So it's, if you chase, they're going to run away. It's basic human nature. And I've seen that over and over again in various different formats. But so what happens, let's think about this for a second, right? When you try to qualify a prospect, right? Remember the steps we just went over. The very first one was qualifying your prospect. As a salesperson, when you try to qualify your prospect, what's the prospect doing? The prospect is sort of misleading you in many ways. They're smiling, they're very inviting, they're telling you, yes, I'm interested, but maybe they're not really interested in what you're doing. They're just being polite. You know, and they're just bringing this whole thing in. And then you go to the presentation step. This is usually what a prospect that's semi-interested really likes and is after, right? Because they're gaining information, right? So let's say, whatever you want to take as an example. Let's say I'm a prospect, I'm looking for TVs. Okay, I walk into a store, the salesman comes up to me. I'm not ready to buy, but there's a certain level of interest. So I want to see what's the difference between an LED television versus an LCD television, right? I don't know. But the salesperson has all the information. So I'm looking for education here, free, right? This is where the free consulting scenario happens. If you look at bigger companies and big amount of dollars, the person in charge of purchasing always needs that education. The best way to get that education is from a salesperson, right? So the presentation of the salesperson ends up being an educational session for the prospect. Now there's nothing wrong with that, as long as at some point in time they're gonna pay you, right? Otherwise you're just consulting for free, on and on and on and on. And then you become unhappy because you're not getting paid, you're not putting food on the table, and you're going, this isn't working, I'm a bad salesperson. And there's a lot of those salespeople out there, right? What happens next? You go into the close. That was the natural next step, right? You qualifying, you're presenting, and then you go into the close. Well, the prospect isn't ready yet, but they still want more information. So what do they say? I need time. I need time. Maybe. I need to think about it. Anybody ever heard that before if you're selling? Let me think about it a little bit. Right? The chase. You call, there's no one on the phone. You knock on the door, they turn off the lights, make sure that you think that they're not home. You leave voicemails. Nobody responds. You send emails, and if you're a techie like me, you've got a little tracker thing in there that says they opened the email, but they never responded to you. Even worse, right? You know they're looking at the email, but they never respond to you. This goes on and on and on and on, and this sales cycle keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. You're getting more and more frustrated as the salesperson. Because you're not going anywhere. You're not making any money. You're putting your suit on. You're getting in that car. You're driving to the prospect. They're not there. They're maybe sitting in their office, and the gatekeeper, the admin, or whoever is sitting there is not even allow you in. He's busy, okay, but he's sitting back there sipping his coffee. Right? So the Sandler Sales system changed that for me. And I'm going to dive in and talk about the steps of that. But think about, imagine for a second where if you could be in the world of sales, because it's a very lucrative field to be in, and come from a perspective of service rather than trying to get sales. Right? You come from a point of, I have a solution that you need, Ms. Prospect. And by giving you this solution, I'm going to better your life. That's what really sales is about. You're a solution provider. You're somebody who's listening very actively to your prospect. And you're trying to understand what their needs are. And you're looking in your arsenal, meaning your series of products and services that you're selling. And you're going, this one I think is very good for you. And you get into that conversation of let's do an assessment and see if this will work, right? But Sandler has a 7-step formula. I mean, this whole thing is, I'm giving you an overview. I don't want you to think that this is it. But I'm going to give you these 7 steps, and you know, my finger's broken, so I can't write for you, so please take your own notes, and we'll go from there. If you're interested, I can connect you with Greg Wilson, and he can teach you all this stuff. But the very first step is bonding and rapport. Makes sense, right? You're not going to walk up to some total stranger and try and sell them something. Why? Because I don't know anything about you. If you're a scam artist, maybe you're running up to every single person and trying to sell them something. But if you're really trying to provide a solution for somebody, you need to understand them. You need to bond with them. And during the training, you go into a lot of psychological profiling tips to really understand how somebody communicates. Because the way Mylan communicates is very different than the way I communicate, maybe. I need to understand that. It has to do with gestures, the eye movement, the way somebody responds, the words they use, right? Are they using descriptive words, or are they using words that are more audible, right? There are many different things that are in there, but what I want you to take away from this point is it's not as simple as shaking somebody's hand and asking them about their family and their friends and their motivations and maybe what they do for recreation, which is a formula that is used over and over again. Form, right? Sure, that's a part of it. But you need to understand the person, you need to bond with them. Why? Because throughout this process, you need trust. You need to build that genuine trust, and that comes by your prospect believing that you genuinely are interested in them. Not in the bills that are in his pocket, right? It's not about the money, it's about them. You want to genuinely help them. So step 1 is bonding and rapport, and it goes to a deeper level to be able to create trust. Second step, and I think this step is a critical step that actually sets everything else up. It's called the upfront contract. The upfront contract is a prerequisite. It's more than a step. It's like you gotta learn how to do this thing, because throughout the rest of the process, you use it over and over again. What's the upfront contract? The upfront contract, simply put, is that you and I will set expectations before we start something, right? So if I'm going to call you and I'm going to spend half an hour on the phone with you, I'm going to send you an email ahead of time providing details about what we're going to do, setting the expectations, right? Then I'm on the phone and I'm going to set up an in-person meeting. For that in-person meeting, before I end the phone call, we're going to set up a contract that says, during the hour that we have together next week, we're going to be talking about this particular issue. I'm going to need your undivided attention. Because I've been in situations where I've got an appointment with this guy, I'm going into his business, he's answering calls, he's running around talking to his front desk person, he's checking his email. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there trying to talk to this guy and understand whether or not this product is beneficial to him. Doesn't work. So the upfront contract dictates that we're going to have this much time together, we're going to talk about these specific things, and you'll find out what those things are as we go through the steps of this. So I'm going to be asking you questions. Are you okay answering them? Because if you're not, there's no point in me coming and sitting with you. And I'm going to need your undivided attention for this amount of time. And here's the most important part. For every single upfront contract, you set the expectations. You say, at the end of this meeting, 1 or 2 things are going to happen. We're either going to be able to move forward together, or we're not. So there's either a yes or a no at the end of our meeting, whatever the meeting is, whether it's the first meeting or the last meeting. There is no maybe. There is no let me think about it. right? And you get good at this after a while. You develop that posture, and you tell the person, listen, at the end of this meeting, you're going to be able to tell me whether we should take this step, the next step or not, right? Yes or no are fine. But don't give me this maybe stuff. I'm a big boy, you can say no to me, you won't break my heart. Because I don't want to waste your time, and I certainly don't want to waste my time. It's very clear, it's upfront, right? You set that expectations upfront. And this upfront contract, when you get good at it, you can use it over and over and over again, regardless of where we are in the sequence. So the first step was bonding and rapport. The second step was this upfront contract that we just talked about. The next step in this process is budget. And this is very, very interesting, because in a traditional sales sequence, what do? We end up going to the very end of our sales pitch, and then we tell them what the price is. We keep the price until the very, very end. I remember when I was in corporate life, and we had vendors come through and presenting, I used to always flip back to the last slide to see what the price is before they finished the presentation, because they wouldn't get to that thing until the very end. What a waste of time, right? If you can't afford what I'm selling, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting your time. If I'm trying to sell you a yacht that costs $150,000, and you can't afford to buy a Ford Pinto, I'm wasting my time, right? We shouldn't be having this conversation. I should be saying, look, maybe a little bit later, maybe there's something else, there's another solution that we can put together for you. But that budget is very key. So in Sandler, towards the beginning, you figure out whether or not the person can pay for the product or service that you're offering, rather than the very end. So you get the money out of the way. And then you move forward to the next step, which is called pain. Pain. People don't buy based on logic. We buy based on emotion. We use our logic to justify the decision that we made. So if we know that we're buying based on our feelings, we got to use it. We got to explore that area with our prospect. And pain is a very, very strong feeling. It's probably the strongest feeling with humans. But pain, analyzing pain is very interesting. Usually people don't just come out and tell you what the real pain is. It's hidden. It's layers and layers and layers below. So we're not, if you're in a situation where you're doing business-to-business sales, and you're a business person, I'm trying to sell you a solution for your business, you're not going to tell me right away that, oh, I'm going to have to shut down my business next month if I don't get new clients. Right? What you're saying, even beyond that, you're not going to be telling me that, listen, if I don't get this, I'm going to, my marriage is going to fall apart. That's where the real pain is, right? Losing the house is the real pain. But superficially, they'll give you some numbers. You know, they'll be like, oh yeah, I need to increase my sales by 20%. So what? That's not the real pain. Yes, that's sort of a manifestation of the pain that's showed up to the surface. So you learn to be able to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and some of these meetings get pretty intense. But the prospect actually likes it because they see that you're caring. You're digging deeper and deeper. And usually you want to come up with 3 or 5 different pains that you have. So you've built a bond. You've learned how to, you're using the skill of upfront contract to move forward. You know what their budget is, and now you know what their real struggle is. You know what the challenge really truly is deep down. The next step is you try and figure out who the decision maker is. Majority of the time, and this could be an ego thing, this could be a gatekeeper thing, the person you're talking to tells you, oh yeah, I'm the decision maker. I can make this decision, I can buy this on the spot, I can sign that contract. Not true. There's always an accountant that needs to be involved. There might be another consultant in the background that needs to be talked to. So you need to very specifically ask, who makes the decisions here? They'll say, me? You say, okay. So based on the conversation we had, your budget is $75,000. You're able to sign the check for $75,000 without talking to anybody else. At that point, they'll say, no, I think I need to talk to my accountant first. Or I need to consult my wife or my husband or whatever, depending on who you're selling to and how big the item that you're selling is. So that decision maker thing is very key. You want to be talking to the decision maker. Because if you don't, they hear the story second and third hand and so on and so forth, and it's just not good. It's not going to happen, right? Once you get through that stage, and look, we haven't done any presentation up until here, right? Remember the presentation that in the traditional sales was right away, right up at the top? We haven't done it yet. We haven't talked about our products or services yet. That's where this comes into account. Fulfillment is what they call it. Now, fulfillment could be mistaken by actually fulfilling the order. That's not what it is. This term means I know what your budget is, I know what your issues are, I know that you're the decision maker now, we're sitting down and talking. Now let me see what it is that I can put together to give you as a solution. So I'm asking you what you'd like to see in order to make this decision. Right? My presentation is very much dependent on what you want to see as a prospect, not what I want to give you. The proposal that I put together is just what you'd like to see, the questions you'd like to get answered, right? There's no show and tell here until this step. If you tell me, I'd like to touch your product, I'd like to smell it, I'd like to play with it, I'd like to work with it, then that's what we'll do. It's based on what you want. That basically is the close. That in traditional sales, there's only one type of close here. You told me what you wanted and I gave it to you. And because we have an upfront contract already put in place, you're either going to say yes or you're going to say no. And we know where we stand then. In some cases, you might need that seventh step. And that seventh step is post-sell. Okay, so you've sold your product, everything is done. At this step, basically what you do is you make sure they don't have buyer's remorse. Make sure you don't walk out of that door and they go, oh my God, I have a 15-year relationship with the contractor that used to do this job for me. How am I going to tell him that I'm no longer going to be working with him? Because I've signed a contract with a new guy. Right? So post-sell basically says, because remember we went through and we've dealt with all the budget stuff, we've dealt with all the pains and everything. So we have a lot of information. Let's say, you know, we're selling something and he can't make up his decision about it being the color green and blue. You know, he wants blue, but we only have green. In the post-sell step, we'll say something like, remember how you wanted the blue color? And he says, yes. But you said it was okay to take green, right? You don't have any issues with green. No, I thought about it, I think we can handle green. Was there somebody that was delivering this product to you before? Yeah, Joe was delivering it. What are you going to tell him? Oh, we've been unhappy with this service anyway. We're gonna tell him that since his product was late all the time, we went with somebody else. Are you sure? Can you tell him that for sure? Because maybe he'll get upset. Right? So you have these conversations in the post-sell step to make sure that that relationship is maintained, to make sure that you're actually giving them a solution that fits, to make sure that when you're sitting in your car and you're driving away from that appointment, he's not sitting in his office saying, oh my God, what did I do? Right? You don't want that. You don't want that. There is no relationship there. There is no service there, right? That's it. Those are the 7 steps. Now let me say one more thing here. Remember at the beginning, I suggested to you that we're all salespeople at one level or another. We're influencing others. We're changing decisions. We're changing the way somebody thinks. Take these steps and apply it to anything. If you're a mom, well, maybe not yet, but you know, if you're a mom of an older child who you actually hold conversations with, or if you talk to your parents, you have a significant other at work, whatever it is that you're doing, think about this. Many times the bonding and rapport stage is already done because of the relationship. But, you know, are you setting up an upfront contract when you're going in to have that conversation? And you're thinking, oh, there's no budget involved. We're just going to go see a movie, for example. Well, there is. They're just not paying it with money. If somebody wants to sit at home and watch TV and you're trying to convince them to go watch a movie, they're giving up their comfort of the couch for what you believe. Does that make sense? They're not paying for it with money, but they're paying for it with something else, with their convenience, whatever it is, they're paying for it with something, right? And you have to dive in and see the various aspects of the emotions that are involved in that decision-making process. So the next time, whether professionally or personally, you're in a situation, in a sales situation, I want you to think about these steps because they've changed the landscape for me for sure. If any of you are interested in learning more, let me know and I'll introduce you to Greg, who is a master of this stuff, and he can help you out. But other than that, don't chase them. Make sure that you're there as a solution provider and you're providing the right solution to the right prospect.